got to actually get in the top 10. The room to be in the conversation.
Yo, what is poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it's Guardy3. And you know what it is. It's Thursday. It means it's time to talk hoops. It's time for basketball. It's time for and one. But let me introduce the greatest co-host I could have asked for. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mo Betta. So Mo,
What's
how you
good,
doing
everybody?
today?
I'm doing great. What's good with everybody out there in the chat? Thank you for taking your time to join Brett and I on the N1 podcast, powered by Wire to Wire Network. Hey, Brett, we got a lot of playoffs to talk about. We got a lot of postseason awards to get into. Let's get it.
So I figure Mo, we might as well start with we might as well just give a quick update right now. If anybody's wondering, Cleveland and Boston are playing right now. Score of that game is 99-83. Cleveland up 16. So, just watching that game, Mo, just night and day to me. It's insane how amazing Evan Mobley looks as the only big on the floor. Like when he's not limited and can actually work in the space he's provided with, I think he looks incredible.
He looks like a completely different player from game one. He has a length advantage, an athleticism, a quickness advantage, obviously over the veteran Al Horford, and he's showing it tonight. And look, I know Evan Mobley physically is built more like Chet Holmgren, so he's not really what you would call a big who's built to be a center. But when you look at the Celtics lineup, they're a long team, but they're not a big team. I think Evan Mobley could be effective. And as a basketball fan, I was talking about it on the morning show. I don't have no dog in this fight, but I want this to be a series. I want the Celtics to have to earn their way to the conference finals.
I think it will be. One thing I'm watching with the Celtics team is I think they look awesome when Al Horford's on the floor. But when he has to go to the bench, that team just looks absolutely different. Every single run I've watched is Al Horford has to go to the bench. In comes either Luke Cornett, which I don't think he should ever touch a floor in the postseason. Like he's a good rotational basketball player in the regular season to suck up minutes, but when it comes to big moments, you do not want him on the floor at all. And as soon as I saw him on the floor, I was like, here come the Cavs run. Sure enough, 11-3 run right away. Just abusing Luke Cornett. So I think that going forward, they definitely need to cut out the Cornett minutes, and I think they got to roll with Xavier Tillman. I don't think there's really any amazing options for them with the injury to Kristaps, but at the same time, I think that Tillman minutes, they just looked better than, Cornett minutes, which either way, it feels like a lose-lose situation, but, I think at least keeping Cornett on the bench is an upgrade compared to having him on the court.
I agree. I also think that something that I kept telling people about, I said it will come back to bite you because you're getting too comfortable doing so. Look, I know Drew Holiday is the kind of pro, and you would know this, you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, you had Drew for a few years. He's the kind of guy that he's not going to complain about being the fourth option or the fifth option because he'll tell you, like, I'll still play defense, I'll still try to be impactful. But Drew Holiday has a very good offensive game, especially when, and you notice he can be a streaky shooter, but he's terrific at posting up, at getting to the basket. He's a bigger guard. And Boston using him the way they use him, where he takes 4 or 5 shots a game, I just think that's going to come back to bite you when you need him. And he's not in a rhythm, Brett, because he's deferring. He's not trying to shoot. Like, he's not even the fourth option on Boston. He's the fifth option. And I just think they've put him so far down the chart in terms of the go-to or the moments they want to go to him. He's not in rhythm. I think he's taken like 7 shots this game. He's made 2. That to me is a direct result of the way he's used. They use him like they used to use Marcus Smart, and he's not Marcus Smart. He's better than Marcus Smart. And if I've said this before, if you're going to use him like Marcus Smart, you should have kept Marcus Smart.
And you would have had to pay Marcus Smart a whole heck of a lot less than you do Drew Holiday.
This is true, but if you want a guy out there who to just play defense, I can understand that if his skill set said the only thing he can do is defend at a high level. Drew Holiday, on average, by default, is a guy that can get you 16, 18 a night easy if you involve him in your offense. And they've gone another route, and I just think ultimately that's going to bite them. They're a smaller team, and I like Derek White. He's one of those players that I pull for, but I don't pull for Derek White because I think he's better than Drew. He's not. They've elevated him in terms of the offensive opportunities that he gets over Drew, and because Drew is older and more of a pro, he's not the kind of guy that's going, I'm only getting X amount of shots. He's just going to lock in, play defense, and do the little things. But I think without Kristaps Porzingis, wouldn't you say that Drew Holiday would need to be a little bit more offensive aggressive?
No, he absolutely does. That Kristaps really, you're missing a huge piece of offense there with Kristaps, and it's such a big piece that you don't want to thrust it all onto like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think,
Right.
and Derek White even has already picked up the pace. Now I think it's just time for Drew to be a little more aggressive.
And I
And,
and I
and
love
again,
no, go ahead.
oh no, I say especially when Al Horford's off the floor. To me, that's the
Correct.
time where he really needs to be aggressive and try to get something going on offense because that lineup with a non-existent rim protector or just you're going to need to start scoring points there, and I think that the extra offensive umph in those lineups just has to come from Holiday.
I agree. And look, like you said, with no rim protection, the Cavs are getting they're as the saying goes, their feet are touching the paint a lot more in game two, right? There are no shot blockers. But see, to me, I look at it another way too, Brett. This is one of those games where not only if you're the better team, you should assert yourself, impose your will. If Jason Tatum is that guy, if he's that guy who's supposed to be one of the five best players in the league, even on a night when he's not shooting his best, this is one of those times where you go, give me the ball, I'll create something. If I don't make a shot, I'll get to the foul line, but I'll find a way to generate positive offense. Like you can generate positive offense or positive energy by being aggressive. If Tatum touches the paint and makes the defense collapse, he could kick it to Brown or White. That turns a good shot that's going to be contested into a great shot that's wide open. That's another way to generate offense. I just need to see him be a little bit more aggressive. I think that he coasted in game one. He didn't shoot really well in game one, but he didn't need to because everybody else shot the ball very well. But in game two now, like you said, the Cavaliers went on that big run when Al Horford went to the bench, and now the Celtics are in kind of a dogfight.
Yeah, and they don't really need to get into a dogfight with Cleveland. Cleveland is very scrappy. That's a team you just want to punch them in the mouth and you want to put them away early. Try to get you got to try to take Darius Garland out of the game, and I'm excited to see game three what the adjustments are. Let's see. I'm going to check real quick if they closed the gap at all. I don't think they did. No, 102 to 87, 15-point game with 7 minutes left. So it's looking like they're going to split the first two games and maybe go 1-1 into game three.
And you know the rule: a series is not a series till somebody loses or somebody wins on the road. Much like Minnesota, they kind of doubled up on that. They didn't just win on the road once. They literally took complete control of the series, which is it's crazy because even though there's no guarantees that the Nuggets were going to repeat, I thought this was going to be a great series. And look, I don't know that it still won't be, but the only way it will be is Denver would literally have to go to Minnesota and do what they did in Minnesota and win 2 games.
And the best part about that is, like, at this point, they would almost really convince people it's going to be the series. They need to win in decisive fashion, too.
Yeah.
Like, it can't just be some cheeky 1-point win in game three. Like, I almost feel like they have to try to go out and assert themselves and show them, we're the champs for a reason and really roll to like a 10-point victory or something. But, this Minnesota defense is tough. like it's no joke. We haven't seen a defense really do what the Timberwolves are doing to this Nuggets offense really since the bubble Lakers, since that 2020 Lakers team. And
And
they're doing it in the similar formula. Like, listen, a lot of people want to talk about, Dwight's one-on-one defense, which he was good. However, what really flusters Jokic and the Nuggets offense isn't the one-on-one defense on Jokic. It's how well do you take away the cutters? How well do you take away the backside help?
correct.
How well do you frustrate Jamal Murray? And I think that's something that 2020 team, did exceptionally well. Like, as much credit as people want to give Dwight, I think a lot of credit needed to go to Caruso, Green, and just LeBron, all just kind of taking away Jokic's passing lanes on the weak side and kind of forcing the Nuggets to be a more one-dimensional offense. And 4 years later, we're seeing it again.
And this is different because I want people to know, everybody out there listening, this isn't a fluke. The Nuggets were held to under 90 points 3 times, and the team that did it this season all 3 times was the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's not an accident. They've beaten them multiple times, and I know the regular season is different from the playoffs, but they use the same recipe, the same formula. Yes, they're physical at the point of attack, but to your point, Brett, every time Jamal Murray, whether he has the ball or not, their defenders, they're all over him off the ball, right? Like they make him fight to get the ball. These guys are going through screens. They are going over screens very fast. When you look at what Alexander Walker, Edwards, and McDaniels are doing, you say 2020 Lakers, which was very good. This almost, and I don't want to go too far over the top, but it looks a lot to me like the 03-04 Pistons. They are shutting down everything. They're cutting off the passing lanes. And when Joker can operate one-on-one, they're being so physical with him that nothing is comfortable. They're not letting anybody be comfortable. When KCP cuts through, somebody puts a body on him and disrupts his angle of his cut. Aaron Gordon lurking back there for that lob. Gobert took that away in game 1. In game 2, they didn't have Gobert, but to call out Cat and give Cat credit, I think Karl Anthony Towns played the best defense I've seen him play in game 2 his entire career. He was outstanding.
I do think the Nuggets actually right now, it almost feels like they have an Aaron Gordon problem because Aaron Gordon looks lost out there. Like Rudy Gobert, and in game 2, it was more Naz Reid and Cat. They're taking away his dunker spot, which is where he's the most comfortable. So they're kind of forcing him to be a jump shooter, which that isn't Aaron Gordon. Like he's capable of knocking him down at times, but you don't want him living out there.
Right.
And there are times where I'm just watching the game and Aaron Gordon's just like floating at the elbow. Now I'm sitting here like, there's a lot of guys you can say they're a reliable mid-range shooter. Aaron Gordon is not one of those guys that I want sitting there trying to rein in 15 footers. So I think they need to make sure that Aaron Gordon really is in a good position at all times and knows his role. Or they just got to surround Jokic with 4 shooters. Like this has just so far, it feels like been a nightmare matchup for Aaron Gordon, offensively at least, because this defense knows exactly what they want to do to take away his strengths.
I agree. And look, let me give credit to the T-Wolves coaching staff, aside from the players, because Mike Malone made an adjustment, and I thought he was going to make an adjustment. I thought he was going to go and try to run a 2-man game with Joker and Aaron Gordon. I still don't think that's a bad idea. What I didn't understand is though when they did the 2-man game, they made Joker the roller, and they let Aaron Gordon still operate on the outside. And they were giving Aaron Gordon, you're going to give Aaron Gordon jump shots all day long. If Aaron Gordon can beat me with his jump shot, Brett, I'm going to shake their hands and go, well, that was just a strategy. But if Aaron Gordon's going to beat us with jump shots, then we're going to go home. And I think he's got to find another way to generate offense. And I think he can do that by being more aggressive on the offensive boards. He can get out and run because he's very good in the open floor. The guy that they need to find more shots for, it's not Jamal Murray. It's Porter Jr. They've got to find a way to run him off pin downs, pick and pop, screen and roll. Like Michael Porter Jr. is the guy that Denver needs to get unlocked.
No, absolutely. And we're already talking about the, Timberwolves defense. Might as well parlay this into the announcement. Rudy Gobert is officially a 4-time DPOY. So I'd like to say congratulations to Rudy Gobert.
Congratulations.
And what I'm really hoping from this playoff run is that, because there's like almost been a stigma about Rudy, that he's an overrated defender. He's just good because he's tall. He's just a big guy. I'm really hoping this playoff run just kind of knocks that stench off, because people don't understand, like, he is an incredible talent defensively, and people are just like, oh, attack him in isolation, not realizing that he actually moves really well for his size. He's not like Wemby level athletic, but he's still a pretty agile 7'1". He's not. I think people think that he's got like the athleticism and mobility of like Brooke Lopez, who's kind of in quicksand all the time.
Right.
Rudy actually moves really well, and he deters a lot of shots at the rim, and he's one of the best defenders in isolation this year. So that's not really a viable option to go at him.
So I want to give Rudy Gobert credit for having a terrific season. And you know that I don't love him as much as you do, but I do know that he is, to me, more than deserving of being Defensive Player of the Year. He absolutely has earned those. He's terrific. What I think that I like the most about him is he plays within himself, meaning he knows that I am the center of the universe when it comes to our defense. On offense, I'll just take what I can get offensively. That's not what I'm there for. I'm there to do some breast screens, maybe pick and roll or dive. But he knows who he is. He doesn't force up a shot just to get up a shot. And I'll say this, to be fair to him, when he was in Utah, yes, it was easier to isolate him in space, but a lot of that had the fact to do with his teammates were horrible defenders. They were horrible defenders. And I'm talking about Donovan Mitchell as well. He was not a good defender. Now you put him with Jaden McDaniels, Alexander Walker, and Mike Conley, and you've got 4 guys who move their feet well, play great in space, show, recover. When you know you have teammates like that as a rim protector, that makes you play even harder, because your guys, they're dogs. They're out there playing just as hard as you are. So I think Rudy Gobert is more than deserving of this award. And I've heard people say, well, Mo, he averages 2.2 block shots per game, while Wemby is averaging almost 4. So why isn't Wemby Defensive Player of the Year? Let me simplify. I think Wemby at some point will be Defensive Player of the Year. It could be next season. But I want you to realize you can't be Defensive Player of the Year on a team that only won 22 games. It doesn't work like that. And quite frankly, a lot of blocks that Wemby gets, he gets over the course of games where they're getting the brakes beat off of them. So he gets the blocks, but they are getting destroyed. So just like you say, people have garbage points and garbage baskets. Those are garbage blocks. They're not. It's not like it's a close game. Wemby met somebody at the Summit, they're getting destroyed by 20 plus, and Wemby met somebody at the Summit. Not the same thing. I think Wemby's terrific, but you just can't look at a number and go, he must be great because he has more block shots. Manute Bol led the NBA in block shots one year. I think he averaged like 5 blocks per game. Manute Bol was not a great defender. Manute Bol never won Defensive Player of the Year. Don't you get caught up in just looking at numbers. Watch the games.
And if you watch Manute Bol, you will realize that all because you're tall doesn't mean you're a good rebounder. I've never seen somebody so tall just be so horrid at grabbing rebounds.
That's facts.
By the way,
and Brett, I just want to throw one more thing in. He averaged 5 blocks a game. He also got dunked on like 7 or 8 times a game. I just want to put it out there.
By the way, who really thought, and I love DPOY voting when they release the full list.
Oh, I know where you're going. I already know where you're going.
Who gave Sabonis a DPOY and an MVP vote? Somebody really thought that Sabonis should have been like 87 MJ, Mr. DPOY and MVP. Come on now. What are we doing here?
Does his dad have a vote? Is that what happened? Because I love Sabonis as a player. I think you do too. But where he doesn't star at is defensively. How did he get a vote? How did he get? I don't know how he got a vote. That maybe Mike Brown gave him a vote, but come on, man, come on. That vote belonged to Derek White or belonged to Gobert or even Wemby. But come on, Sabonis.
Like I said, it turns out that voter was the same one that when Rudy won it back in like 2021, casted votes for Andre Drummond and Hassan Whiteside. He's like he's like extremely in love with rebounds and blocks.
Oh, so his vote is more like a protest vote.
Pretty much. If you lead the league in rebounds and you're pretty much going to get his vote. If you throw in some blocks, it's a lock at that point.
And yet, if you've ever watched Hassan Whiteside, yes, he gets blocks, he gets rebounds. Hassan Whiteside, not a good defender. Stiff as a board. Hassan Whiteside makes Rudy Gobert look like Anthony Edwards in the open floor. And I love Andre Drummond as a rebounder. I love him as a backup center. I really do. But Andre Drummond is not a good defender. He's not. He's a terrific rebounder. And I would agree when you say the last part of playing great defense is to secure possession of the ball. So yes, being a great rebounder does matter, but being a great rebounder doesn't mean you're a great defender.
Andre Drummond, like I always say, I think he has the most I've never seen somebody before him have so many useless 2020 games. But he has so many 2020 games where they're just going to lose by 15. And the 20 rebounds come from the fact that he doesn't have great touch around the rim. So it's just him grabbing his own miss, putting it back, missing again, grabbing his own rebound.
So they're all his own misses.
Yeah, like half of his 2020 games, you watch them, and half the rebounds are just him missing point blank and grabbing his own rebound.
So when you go to the box score, you go, Andre Drummond had 26 points and 25 rebounds. That looks impressive. You're like, and it was impressive enough. I believe you could correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Andre Drummond make like 2 All-Star teams?
Yeah.
And both of now he made the 2 All-Star teams when he was on Detroit. Remind me, how good were the Pistons when he was on Detroit? That's my point. Really, really bad teams, even the worst of the worst teams, guys, have a best player. He was their best player, but they weren't a good team. My point is, on really bad teams, somebody gets to put up numbers. Andre Drummond, to me, at his best, is actually right where he belongs. He is a terrific backup center. You don't want him as your starting center. Point blank, period.
No, I will never understand to this day what exactly that, 20 mid 2010s Pistons team was trying to build. Like putting together Andre Drummond with Greg Monroe and Josh Smith. Everybody's getting more spacey and they're just going the complete opposite direction. And I'm looking at their starting lineup from 2013. It's like, oh, their game 1 starter, 40-year-old Chauncey Billups at point guard. I'm like, oh, good grief.
I think they built what they were trying to build. They were trying to build a team that's going to be high in the lottery, and they did exactly that. They succeeded.
All the credit in the world to them for that. Some more playoff series going on. I think actually the other game tonight, we have Dallas and OKC.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you're going to see a lot of pictures from the series because what Dallas is doing, what OKC is doing on defense, I think you're going to see a lot of, those, oh, you're reading to tell me they covered Luka like this, because OKC is completely ignoring Derek Jones Jr., Josh Green, Dante Exum. The Dallas Mavericks really are really good offense when those guys are getting respect and spacing the floor just enough for Luka to work a 2-man game. But the OKC's like, Derek Jones Jr. is going to beat us from 3. Let him. If Dante Exum's going to start cashing him, let him cook. And I'm curious to see what the adjustment is, because if you watch that game, it was pretty insane at times. They have five. They pretty much have four guys touching the paint, and the only guy who's not in the paint is just one guy trailing Kyrie. So
Right, right.
Luca had his pick of shooters, one or two, because they made sure to take away that Gafford role. So I'm just going to be curious on what's the adjustment? How are you going to effectively attack this OKC defense, which is just saying Jones beat us, PJ Washington beat us.
Well, look, first of all, you got to get a better game out of Luca. And I know much has been spoken about when it comes to his health. But if he plays, and I'm not trying to be hard, I'm just being real. If you're on the court, then I can't give you any excuses. You know what I mean? Like if you're on the court, no excuses. If you can't go, if you're not 80, if you're not even 80% of who you normally are, you probably shouldn't play at all. But if Luca's going to be out there, he's got to be more aggressive, not with his shot, but more aggressive with trying to get to the basket. Like I think a lot of times Luca gets himself going early when he gets to the foul line real quick 4 or 5 times. He gets himself going. Whereas with Kyrie, I think Kyrie can just go. I was a little disappointed that he didn't really get engaged until the second half. And I think against this Oklahoma City team, I think you need Kyrie to get off to a fast start. You need to get him into the offense right away. If Kyrie and Luca are cooking at the same time, then a guy like Washington becomes live. A guy like Hardaway can become live. Exum can become live. Derrick Jones Jr. is an interesting case because he can make a three, but like you said about Aaron Gordon, he's not going to make a living shooting threes. The strength of his game is his defense and his athleticism. So maybe they need to put him in a dunker spot and to where he can make use of that athleticism. I thought they got a great game out of Gafford in game one. Gafford was terrific. I lost count of how many times he met guys at the rim for Oklahoma City. So I think Gafford was terrific. And if you really look at the game, the Oklahoma City starters, they weren't great. The difference was they got 40 points from their bench. That was the difference. And Dallas got next to nothing from there. So even though Dallas lost and it looked like a blowout, the game was a 1 point game, I believe, late in the third. And then OKC went on another blitz and Dallas never recovered. I picked the Mavs to win this series in 7, even though I concede honestly Oklahoma City is the deeper, more talented team. I still think when you have two players like Kyrie and Luca, flanked by guys like Lively, by guys like Gafford, along with Washington, I think they can still win the series. It's weird because Oklahoma City is more talented and deeper, but I think Dallas is actually the bigger, more physical team around the basket. The Oklahoma City perimeter players are physical. When you talk about Jalen Williams and Lou Dort and those kind of guys, they get after you. They do, no doubt. And Luka's going to have his hands full because Lou Dort, he gets into your jersey. I mean, so I don't think nothing comes easy to Luka, but at the same time, I actually think the strength of Lou Dort's game plays to the strength of Luka's game. So I'm interested to see what game two looks like. If Luka is looks limited or hobbled, the Mavs are going to be in trouble. They're going to need him to be at least 85, 90% to have a shot because Oklahoma City is one of these teams, Brett, and I'm sure you know this, they go about 9 deep, at least 9 deep. They bring Isaiah Joe off the bench, and that cat just shoots the cover off the ball from 3. Wiggins is a productive player for them. The other Jalen Williams, the big man, is a productive player for them. Like this is a deep team, and I get why they're favored, and maybe they'll be even more motivated tonight, Brett, since SGA didn't win MVP.
Yeah, SGA definitely had a case. I see a lot of people saying that. Obviously, you might as well segue into this one. Jokic won another MVP. You know, congratulations to Jokic. A lot of people are up in arms because just like how people saying Wemby was robbed of a DPOY,
Right.
now people are saying that SGA was robbed of an MVP. And while I think that, SGA had definitely had a case, he was extremely good. I don't think they made the wrong selection for MVP. I think one is coming. I think in the next 5 years, one of these MVPs is gonna be SGA's, but unfortunately, you're running into an issue where the best player in the world just had a little more impact than you.
And SGA had a terrific season. And I know a lot of people are like, but he averaged more points per game. I heard Shaq's argument. Shaq's argument said that he was more of a stat stuffer. And I was like, no, that's a horrible argument because Joker averages 14 rebounds and almost 9, or he does average over 9 assists a game to go with his 26 points. So the stat stuffer argument actually favors Joker. I'm a big fan of both guys. I had no problem if SGA had a 1. I wouldn't have no problem with that at all. But I don't think Joker winning is a wrong pick. I think between the two, there wasn't a wrong pick. It just went to Joker.
And I got a kick out of that. Other people are like, well, he's the 1 seed. It's like, yeah, and Jokic was the 2 seed with the same exact record. What are you
Same
talking
record.
about?
Right,
Like
right.
they literally both had 57 wins. So the 2 seed, one seed argument's out the window. And like, listen, well, the one thing that I like to show, and I showed this on a couple of platforms, is SGA when he was on the court, the Thunder were a cool plus 11, better than their opponents. When he was off the court, they were still a slight positive. When Jokic was on the court, they were also a plus 11. But when Jokic sat, the Nuggets were a -9. They were 9 points worse than their opponents. So I think people like get caught up in the stats and everything, like this your basic counting stats. But when you dive deeper into like impact stats, that's really where you start to formulate an incredible argument for Jokic. There's always the eye test. You can just watch the game and realize how great Jokic is. But for guys, there's some guys that really just love stats. Once you start diving deeper into those advanced like impact stats, then you start seeing like, oh, that is Jokic just is the most impactful person in the NBA right now. The Denver Nuggets literally go as far as Jokic can take them.
Agreed. And again, you make a great point about the actual value, the impact he has. Because a lot of times their response will be, well, SGA Mo, he's great offensively, and SGA is a terrific defender as well. Like, yeah, he is. He's a very good defender. I think he was tops in the league in steals. But when you make the two-way argument, it only works if the guy you're making the argument against isn't a more impactful player. Nikola Jokic literally, when he's on his game, controls not only the pace of the game, he impacts how the other team plays on offense. Even though he's a capable defender, but he impacts how they play offensively because of what he does on the other side of the floor. Like I always tell people, his best defense is everything that he does offensively. It actually affects his defense as well. And if you don't know that, just watch him. Now, granted, that's clearly not based on the first 2 games versus the Timberwolves. But going forward, my guess is whether they lose the series or not, you're going to see the MVP version of Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, and one thing I think about that series too is I'm thinking you're going to see Jokic just start to attack more because if like a lot of that Timberwolves defense taking away the help, it's also leaving a lot of opportunity for Jokic to go one-on-one right at Cat and right at these defenders. The Nuggets looked their absolute best in game 1, for example, when they had 4 shooters. So guess what? Jokic would just start backing down and going on the attack. And Rudy, like I say a lot of good things about Rudy. However, one thing he cannot do is match Joker physically at times because Joker's at times just straight up overwhelmed him and pushed him under the basket. So I think you're gonna see Jokic a lot more just start backing people down and just going on the offensive more instead of trying to defer to teammates.
Let me ask you this too, Brett. And I know I don't want to get too much in the Timberwolves Denver series, but do you think the Timberwolves' ability to make Joker pay, because I think that's what they're doing. They're making him pay for playing drop coverage because if you go that route, Naz Reid can shoot the 3. If you go that route, Cat can shoot the 3. Like they're attacking him, but in a subtle way on defense, right? They're saying, we're not trying to bang with you, but if you step back and you try to be drop coverage, both of those guys are lethal 3-point shooters.
Yeah, no, they're definitely attacking Jokic in a drop. And it's tough because with Jokic, obviously his flaw in defense is mobility. He can't move that well, so he'd either have to commit to stopping Naz Reid at three or commit to trying to help at the rim. And most times it's just effective to put him in a drop. But
right,
last game you saw him struggle because you had Naz Reid and Cat out there, and you can't drop against either of those guys because they can both shoot the three really well. And we got some more series to talk about, but there is one thing I want to say real quick. And it is about the Timberwolves. It's about a certain guy who's playing very well right now. I'm sure we've all heard of him. Anthony Edwards, pretty good ball player. Can we slow down a little bit on Anthony Edwards? And what I mean by that is I'm starting to see, we see all the comparisons. Oh, Anthony Edwards and Michael Jordan. I was watching these guys do a game on TikTok called the Silent Game, and it's really simple. You talk when somebody, like they have like a random player filter.
Oh, is this the one where they say when you see a better player speak or something like that?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
And the random player they got was Tim Duncan, and Anthony Edwards popped up on the screen, and the one guy was like he wanted to talk. I'm like, okay, listen, I love Anthony Edwards just as much as you, but slow down. Putting him into the company of guys like MJ and Duncan right off the bat is going to do more harm to him than good. Let this man develop his own legacy.
Right. I literally saw the same TikTok you saw, and when the one guy fainted like he was gonna he was gonna say something, I was like, "Don't you do it? Don't you do it? You're not saying Anthony Edwards is better than Tim Duncan. Now you can tell me he's more agile and quicker and has a better ball handling skills and all that kind of stuff. He's a two guard. He's supposed to. That's a given. They play completely different positions, but you're not going to tell me, yeah, he's better than 5-time NBA champion, 3-time MVP, 2-time finals. He's better than Tim Duncan. You're getting way ahead of yourself. Slow down. I think Anthony Edwards right now is at the tip of the iceberg where he can become the face of the league, but he's not the face of the league just yet. Because a lot of things have to happen, right? Like one, they have to not just beat the Nuggets, they would need to go on and win all of it, right? Everything. Because you can't become the face of the league because you beat the Nuggets, but then you lost in the conference finals.
And
no, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'll say if you need proof of that, look at Jason Tatum. That dude looks perfect to be the face of the league, except he got to the dance and he lost. And I understand that winning the title isn't everything. There's a lot more going into it than one player. But at the same time, Jason Tatum also underperformed in that finals a little bit. So
he did. And there's no question about it. Look, I'm a big Anthony Edwards fan. And look, as a fan of the game, I want everybody listening to know I'm a fan of Jason Tatum's too. But I'm a fan of his in a way that I admire his talent. I acknowledge that he's a superstar. But a few things can be true. He can be incredibly talented. He can be a superstar. I'm speaking just for me. I'm still just not sold on he's that guy. I'm not. That's just me. I might be walking alone on that thing, but that's just me. I don't see it yet. I look at Brown and Tatum, and I've said this before. If Brown was as talented as Tatum, they'd already be NBA champions.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. But I want to take a minute to have a little fun little perfect time little puppy prospect segment, but
Great.
It's not anybody in the NBA draft. It's actually some guys some ladies who got drafted, and I just wanted to compliment these ladies that just got drafted. Angel Reese looks absolutely phenomenal out there. I'm watching her. She's fighting for offensive rebounds. That Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston duo, they look as good as advertised. If anybody, and once again, watching the game, you could just see how impactful someone like Caitlin Clark is already. Because you can look and go, oh, it took her, 15 shots to get 21 points. But it's so much more than that for elite players. Because I'm watching Caitlin Clark drive, and I'm watching 4 players converge on her. And to me, that's sometimes just as valuable as getting, you shooting it, because she's also a great playmaker. So she sprung it out for an open three, and they got 3 points out of it. So,
I
but
think
obviously, there's so much talent in this draft class that I just wanted to say that.
no, partner. I echo your sentiments, and I'm going to put it out there right now. I don't know what she's going to average per game. I'm going to say between 16 and 18 per game, but I think I'm going to put it out there. I think Caitlin Clark's going to be top 3 in assists this year because everybody is gunning for her. People converge on her. She draws that kind of attention, but she's a great passer, high basketball IQ. She recognizes the attention she draws. She's going to get Aaliyah Boston so many different opportunities. She's going to get the other shooters more opportunities. So I think she's been great for the league already. She's already selling out. They're on the road and they're selling out on the road in a WNBA game. I'm just excited for the league, excited for the impact she's had on the league already.
Yeah, and the one thing too, and then her, her battery mate, Aaliyah Boston has been phenomenal too. I'm watching her, and she's already not only she's scoring, but she's taking advantage of all this extra attention on the perimeter because she's getting in there and snagging offensive rebounds because now everybody's out of position except her. So they already have such a great connection that Clark and Boston duo is going to be trouble this year and just
I
going into
agree.
the future.
I agree. One more thing. We didn't say this, but I'm going to put it out there right now because we're having fun tonight. We're talking playoffs. We're talking end of the season awards. Rudy Gobert has won Defensive Player of the Year 4 times. He's also been a three, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, at least a 3-time All-Star. I'll say it if nobody else wants to say it. Rudy Gobert is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Wrap your minds around it. Absolutely, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying it in a way like, can you believe that? I'm saying it. He just put his stamp. He's going to the Hall of Fame because of what he's done. I'm just being real. Anybody that's won Defensive Player of the Year that many times, and he's been a multiple time All Star. Not to mention he's not done. It's not like his career is over. I think Rudy Gobert has a shot to blow people's mind and maybe win a 5th DPOY. Now, granted, I know there's that mental fatigue that voters get where they're like, no, let's give it to Wemby or something like that. But what if the T Wolves win it all? And then they come back next year and they have the best defense in the league again next year. Why do you think they have the best defense in the league? Yes, they have terrific perimeter players, but they've got the best defensive anchor in basketball. That's Rudy Gobert. I just wanted to give him some credit. I am a harsh critic, but I'm a fair critic. I acknowledge his impact. And I do believe this is going to be one of them things. Here's a crazy one. Think about this, Brett. Rudy Gobert is probably going to get in the Hall of Fame faster than Dwight Howard. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Oh, that's all right. Dwight seems unbothered. He's too busy posting, social media posts of every team that's eliminated him, photoshopped in their jerseys.
Right.
Everybody, Dwight Howard, right?
Right. Well, Dwight's in some league right now where he's dunking on guys that are like 5'2". He seems content with that. So good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, and I was to say, good evening, Alex. I see you just joined us in the chat. Thank you, sir. I looked at that, Mo, and I'm sitting there like everybody's talking about Dwight Howard dominating, so I went into box scores and just started looking at the size of some of these other guys. They have forwards that are 6'2", and I'm like, that's a forward?
I know. He looks like a Marvel giant going against little people like and he's bragging about it like, and I'm like, Dwight, you can't stick your chest out when you're when you're playing against like a bunch of point guards, basically. Like, look, we're talking about a guy that's an 8-time All-Star. He won MVP or Defensive Player of the Year multiple times, led a team to the finals. I am not arguing Dwight Howard's credentials for the Hall of Fame, but I think what's going to make him get a slow induction thing, it's all the other things. It's the antics. That doesn't help, and it's not going to help him. I think Dwight, at some point, you got to be that veteran that just starts acting like a veteran instead of going like, well, if the Lakers had had me this year, we would have beat the Nuggets. All they needed was me because you saw what we did in 2020. Yeah, because Jamal Murray and Joker aren't better than they were in 2020. They actually are better. they've dominated the Lakers since then. And I if the Lakers thought you were any good, then you would still be a Laker, Dwight. It's not like you weren't on the Lakers. They let you go. Look, moving forward into these playoffs, in a perfect world, you would probably want to see Boston match up against maybe the Knicks, but I'd want to see them match up against the Knicks if the Knicks are healthy. If the Knicks are going to keep dropping players like they are now, maybe I'd rather them see Indiana, because at least Indiana would be healthy, and because of Indiana's their pace and the way they play, I actually think Indiana would give Boston a hell of a series just because of their style of play.
Yeah, it was reported that OG Anunoby's out for Game 3. He
Yeah.
sprained a hamstring. You know what that means? It just means Josh Hart. Welcome to another 48 minutes, buddy. Next game.
Not just 48 minutes though, Brett. 48 minutes, and he's going to be the primary on Siakam. Look, I love Josh Hart. I think he's a tremendous player. Do I think he can guard Pascal Siakam consistently? Absolutely not. My prediction is that in Game 3, Josh Hart gets in foul trouble really early. You want to know why the Knicks are up 2-0? Jalen Brunson has been brilliant, but they're up 2-0 because Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo combined for 48 points a game. That's why you're down 2-0. DiVincenzo averages 15 points a game in a regular season. Josh Hart averages 9. Now you got Josh Hart putting up 21 points, 14 rebounds, and 7 assists. Like, he's almost putting up numbers like Joker. I said this on the morning show. He's like little Joker. And then you've got DiVincenzo averaging 26.5 points a game. And I'm not hating. Look, you had DiVincenzo on the Bucks. We both saw him on the Warriors. I'm giving Dante his flowers. He's killing it right now. But I don't think it's because of talent. I think they both have solid talent. But these two guys aren't stars, Brett. We would agree on that, right? They're not stars. Yeah. But they're putting up stars numbers because the Pacers are horrible on defense.
Little Steph and little Joker. No,
little Steph. I like that better.
Look like it.
I like that. They look like it. You're right. You're right, Alex. That's exactly what's going on.
I think part of the Pacers issue too is I think Rick Carlisle's too comfortable with his rotations. I don't think there's any reason why TJ McConnell didn't close out Game 2. He was absolutely phenomenal all game. But they went with Nembhard, who was just getting absolutely barbecued all game. Like, I think some of these veteran coaches, and I struggle to make adjustments. And, I saw it with Coach Bud. He had a rotation, and he stuck with it, regardless of what was happening. Unless it's 2021 and we get random, like, Thanasis minutes. But, like, we see this with a lot of veteran coaches where they'll kind of have a rotation and absolutely want to stick with it. And when it's not working, they won't change it. And we saw a little bit of that from Rick Carlisle in Game 2, because I just don't think there's a good logical reason why McConnell wasn't closing out Game 2 right next to Hallie.
Somebody had to say it. Like, for whatever reason, he doesn't want to play Halliburton and McConnell together. And I'm like, why not? Am I the only one that remembers that Halliburton is a legit 6'7"? He didn't have to guard a guard. He can go guard. You could put him on DiVincenzo, or you can put him on Josh Hart. Like in your film study, what does Josh Hart do best? When Josh Hart gets ahead of steam up, he's a very good finisher at the rim. I'm still going to make Josh Hart prove to me he can make a living shooting that jump shot. But Halliburton can absolutely guard Josh Hart to a degree. Where Josh Hart hurts you and has been hurting you is the rebounding. You can't have a 6'4" guy averaging 14 rebounds a game on your team. You can put. I thought for sure, I'm with you, Brett. I didn't understand why Carlisle did not have McConnell and Hallie at the same time. I think you would have stretched the Knicks defense out, because McConnell was breaking people down off the dribble, getting to the basket. If he's taking people off the dribble and he draws attention, then he can kick to Hallie, and Hallie can shoot the three, or vice versa. I know he loves Nembhard, and Nembhard is a good offensive player, but McConnell was such a dog on defense. And let's be clear, I'm not saying he can stop Jalen Brunson, but what McConnell can do is he literally can make Jalen Brunson work and earn every basket he takes, and nobody else on the Pacers roster can come close to doing that.
No, absolutely. Let's see. I feel bad for RJ Barrett. He left right as the Knicks took off, but I also at the same time think that them having to send him out to get RJ, RJ Ananobi, OG Ananobi was a big part of the reason why they took off.
This
I
is
do
true.
think RJ Barrett got scapegoated a lot for a lot of the Knicks problems. So to an extent, I do feel bad for him. But at the same time, it was a necessary move to send him out. Clearly, that's who the Raptors coveted, and if it's to get OG, then yeah, absolutely.
I
But
think both teams got what they needed. I think Scotty Barnes is still developing his overall skill set. He's still working on becoming a better, more consistent shooter, but he's already become a better ball handler, a better passer. I think they coveted Barrett because they think Barrett can be a very good number two to Scotty Barnes as a number one. I agree with that. I just need Scotty Barnes to be more consistent as a shooter once he's a number one. But I like the Barrett Scotty Barnes combination. I think they play off of each other. I also think they push each other. So I like that, but I still think when you look at the Raptors top to bottom, they're in one of these weird semi rebuild modes. You have those two guys, but then you look at the rest of the roster, it's not very impressive.
do y'all think Barnes is a one? Currently,
No,
no. I
no,
think
I
he can
don't.
develop into one, but
Yeah.
for right now, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want him as my number one.
No, 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 and that's what I was saying. I don't think he's a one now, but I do think that's their long-term plan. And he's made strides. Where he still struggles at, Alex, is he's not a consistent enough shooter from the outside. So too many times he relies on his ability to attack the basket or back smaller forwards or guards down. So no, I don't think he's a one right now, but I do think that's what they're hoping he'll continue to develop into.
Yeah, it was so funny. I saw the stats from the first round. It's like, oh, you're the top five offensive rebounders from round one. The first three were all Knicks. It was literally just Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, and Isaiah Hartenstein, which Isaiah Hartenstein is going to get an awesome contract this offseason.
Yes,
And
yes, he is.
you can't convince me that there isn't a better fit for him out there than the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, try
Wow.
it.
I
I
didn't even
don't think there's a better fit out there, and there's a team that needs him more.
well, I like him with the Knicks, but you just brought up a really great fit. If you put him and he can play with a healthy Morant and he can, man, I like their backcourt, but he's such a good passer, right? And he
Mhm.
does the little things like finishes at the rim, he contests every shot, and the guy is he's like an energizer bunny, right? He's relentless. Isaiah Hartenstein is going to get a really nice contract. You brought up a great point. A lot of people think it's a foregone conclusion he'll be a Nick again, but I don't know. At some point, somebody makes you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, and I think if there's a team, Golden State Warriors, I think they would be a good fit
That would
too.
be
I think
good.
the issue with Golden State is they just don't emphasize the center position. Whereas I do think that Isaiah does offer more than your like Vetman center or just your average center, which honestly is really all Golden State really needs. So I think a team like Memphis, who their big issue is rebounding, which is
Right.
perfect for Isaiah. He can slide into center, push Jaron back to the four where he needs to be, and
Correct.
he's a legit 3-point shooter. So it also keeps the floor space for John Morant. So that is what my first. I'll make my first free agency prediction because it just feels so right.
You sold
Isaiah
me.
Hartenstein leaves the Knicks to sign with the Grizzlies, even if they have to overpay him a little.
You
Like I
so,
think that'd be worth it.
you sold me, partner. And anybody that's been watching the Knicks and Isaiah Hartenstein and his development, he's a terrific passer. So having a center like that can be a pressure release for Desmond Bain and John Morant, I think that's tremendous. Not to mention the fact that he can let Jackson go back to his natural position. Right? We all know Jackson. He can play the five, but his natural position where he can be dominant at is the four. So I think that's great because we all know in a perfect world, Steven Adams would have been able to remain healthy. They would have kept him instead of moving on from him. But I think that in some ways, I think Hartenstein could be better for them than Steven Adams was because he can do more and he's a little bit more agile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, you know what, Mo? I think it's about time. It's about time for your segment, Mo, because some people just got to do better, and we're doing it with Mo better. So, Mo, do you have anybody that needs to do better this week?
So I was going to do the thing about the officiating, but I don't want to touch on that because a lot has been made, and I know you know this about the officiating in the Knicks Pacers game. And if you saw what Rick Carlisle had to say, he said a handful. And I have no problem with him being upset with missed calls and no calls. It's just when he starts to imply that the NBA has to fix in or something of that nature. I don't want to hear that, man. Don't say that. Don't. Well, they don't want us to win because we're a small market team. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like, come on, Carlisle, you're better than that. Don't do that, man. You didn't say that when you beat Miami in the finals. You didn't go, well, you know, because that would have made sense. If that was the case, the NBA would have done everything in their power to make sure the Heat beat the Mavericks, and they didn't do that. So fall back on the conspiracy theories, man. Like, actually, I don't even want to get into that. My actual do better is about somebody who I'm not a big fan of, but he has a very big fan following. His name is Jason Williams. He used to play in the NBA. He was the point guard. He played for the Grizzlies. He played for Sacto. Later in his career, he played for the Heat as a role player. And it's not even about his playing because I don't even want to talk about that. But he was having a conversation on a podcast. I think he was on Jeff Teague's podcast or one of those podcasts. And they were talking about John Stockton, and he was talking about how John Stockton's numbers were inflated. And then they were talking about guys you would take over John Stockton. And with a straight face, he looks into the camera and says, I take Seth Curry, not Steph Curry. I would take Seth Curry over John Stockton. And the guy said, why would you do that? And he said, we've got a better handle, and he's a better shooter. Do you know how dumb you have to be to make that statement and not know basketball? Like, see, that's what annoys me. There are a lot of guys, and I'm talking about everybody that's listening right now, because this is a fact. There are a lot of people who played basketball and they were great at it, but they don't know basketball. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you're starting a team and you want an absolute dog to lead your offense, to set people up, to run the show, make timely shots, and be an all NBA defender, I don't care what you say. You're going to take John Stockton. Everything I just said, Seth Curry that's not part of his skill set. The first time Seth Curry locks somebody down, it'll be the first time. He doesn't play defense. Do not confuse him with his brother. Nobody isolates Seth Curry and says, go get him, Seth. That's not what they use him for. Seth Curry is a catch and shoot spot up guy. Don't give me that he got a better handle. I know John Stockton doesn't have a flashy and one handle, but show me the highlight reel where John Stockton is getting ripped all the time. How many times you saw John Stockton get ripped? Anybody rip John Stockton? Gary Payton used to dig into him. Did he rip him? Couldn't rip him. So don't give me, I would take Seth Curry. This is what I'll say about that conversation. I would take Seth Curry over Jason Williams. I would take Seth Curry over that guy. That makes sense to me. That makes good sense. Jason Williams has made a career off of one highlight reel. He has a handle, and they're like, well, Jason Williams was the top point guards of the 90s. You can't be one of the top players at your position if you can't shoot 40% from the field. The man couldn't shoot 40% from it. Matter of fact, he broke stereotypes. Jason Williams is the first white guy I saw that had skill that couldn't shoot. First one. I ain't never seen one that couldn't shoot before, ever, until I saw Jason Williams. It is not an accident that the Sacramento Kings got better as soon as they got rid of Jason Williams for Mike Bibby. You know why? Because Mike Bibby was a better basketball player, and he could do one thing Jason Williams couldn't do ever, and that was shoot the basketball. I don't understand how this guy keeps getting put on all these podcasts, and he gets talked about like, you know, Jay Will. Like, if you told me top 20 point guards in the NBA or in NBA history, we both know just right now, just off the rip, Jason Williams ain't in the top 20. Jason Williams not in the top 30, not in the top 4. We keep going. Where would you rank Jay? You'd have to go all the way back to Bob Cousy and put him ahead of them, and that's only because Bob Cousy can only dribble with his right hand. Come on, man. They talk to this guy like he's some kind of basketball wizard or savant that knows the game. And he played it. He just doesn't know the game. Like, there's a guy, you ever watch the M1 tour?
Yeah.
The only difference between Jason Williams and the professor can shoot.
Yeah, the Jason Williams love I never got. People talk about him being like this all-time great playmaker, and I'm just kind of like, listen, you need to be a threat offensively to be an all-time great playmaker. Like, people look at me weird because they'll be like, "Oh, Jason Williams is some great Salem, Oregon professor shout out. Alex loves the shout out." And people will look at me like I'm crazy. I'll be like, "Well, Jason Williams playmaking is worse," and I'll start naming guys like, he wasn't as good as a playmaker as Shaq. Wasn't as good as playmaker as Kobe. And, it sounds weird to people because, like, oh, Kobe's such a ball hog. It's like, yeah, but the pressure he generated on offense opened up so much for other players that he was a great playmaker. And actually, Kobe was a very skilled passer. He was just more wired to shoot than pass. But we saw times where he would throw some really great passes. But the Jason Williams love, he gets overhyped all the time, and
it only blows my mind because there are guys that are in the Hall of Fame who actually had terrific careers, and they do not get the love that Jason Williams gets. And I do not understand that. Gary Payton doesn't get that kind of love. The man compared John, and if it sounds like I'm bagging on Seth Curry. Seth Curry had a good career. He became a very good catch and shoot guy. I'm not killing him. I'm only killing him with the notion that some idiot would pick him over John Stockton. That's all I'm saying. His own brother, who loves him, Seth Curry's not picking him over John Stockton. He would tell his brother, "I love you, but I'm taking Stockton."
I don't think his own father, Dell, would be like, "Yeah, Seth Curry over Stockton." Dell would be like, "No, sorry, bud."
You know why? Because Dell knows that Stockton would pass him the damn ball. He's a point guard.
It's funny because me and you almost had the same do better moment, and because I was just going to go in general bag enthusiast, because I think that tends to get people overhyped. If you're flashy and you can hit insane shots, all of a sudden you're like 20 times better than you actually are. Because I know you saw this Facebook post, Mo. This was inspired by Karl Anthony Towns is better than Tim Duncan.
Oh, God. Another one.
And you go into the comments and the reasoning, well, Tim Duncan never dribbled and hit an above the break three. I was like, did he need to? It's like, you say he never hit a three, but one of the biggest shots of his career is literally him stepping out and hitting a three. I think that was against your Lakers, right?
It was.
They ran the pick and pop, and all of a sudden threw it back to Timmy, and nobody saw it coming, and he banked it right in.
Let me just say this to that kind of stuff. You and I, we've had these long conversations about a player's skill versus what they actually do, right? Patrick Ewing is actually more skilled than Shaquille O'Neal. It's a fact. He is. He's a better shooter. He's just more fundamentally sound. Patrick Ewing can't mess with Shaq in his prime. You're really great at doing this when you go like at their peak, what a player did in his peak years. You could make an argument those 3 years, I'm talking about the three-peat Lakers, that version of Shaq, that might be the greatest peak of anybody. When you sum up everything he did, the accolades he earned over that 3-year span, I just wish people would stop doing it. Yes, Karl Anthony Towns is more skilled than Tim Duncan. That is an absolute fact. But if you took Tim Duncan, and I'm not talking about Tim Duncan at the end of his career, I'm talking about Tim Duncan about 23 or 24, and you matched him up against Cat would get eaten alive, and he would stay in foul trouble the entire time. Tim Duncan is a better basketball player. Do not confuse the two. Skill, better player. Skill, impact. Tim Duncan is a more impactful player. Tim Duncan is the guy you build around. Karl Anthony Towns, who I'm a fan of, right now he's in his perfect position. He is a number 2 option. That's what he should have always been, a number 2 option to Anthony Edwards. But if he was the number 1 option, this conversation we're having about the Timberwolves potentially sweeping the Nuggets, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If they didn't have Anthony Edwards and it was just Towns and everybody else, they'd have a pretty good chance, but they wouldn't win the series.
No, and like the thing with Karl-Anthony Towns' number 1 option is we saw them try it for years, and the only year they can make it to the playoffs is when they brought in Jimmy Butler to be the number 1 option.
Correct.
And then they were a playoff team. So I fully agree. I love Cat. And I think people just mistaken too often skill for impact. And
Thank you.
How much skill? Because it's like, is someone like James Harden more skilled than Giannis? Yes, he has more skill than Giannis.
No doubt.
If you were starting a team tomorrow and you could guarantee both of them are going to be fully healthy, who are you picking? Are you picking James Harden or are you picking Giannis? It's not really a question at that point.
I'm picking Giannis all day. I'll make another argument. Except for shooting, I think James Harden is more skilled than Steph. But would I take James Harden over Steph? No, because I want to win. Paul George might be one of the most skilled. If you said, I'm talking about just talent and skill, Kyrie Irving is in the top 3 at a minimum. He might be number 1. Paul George is probably top 5. But would I take Paul George to build a team around? Absolutely not. Y'all have to stop confusing skill versus impact. Not to mention, your skill, there is no stat line for this right here. You either have that or you have this. And if you don't have those, your skill means nothing.
Right, like Michael Beasley was immensely skilled, but he was also not a very good NBA player in a 5-on-5 setting because he really just ended up lacking both of those, like you just said. And we were just talking about Steph and Shaq, and I think this is perfect because one of the things we wanted to talk about, the greatest peak, the greatest season at every position. And because I think we covered all the awards at this point throughout these past couple episodes. So, congratulations to everybody that won an award.
Congrats.
I'll say Teammate of the Year, Mike Conley, and Hustle of the. How do you even measure Hustle of the Year award? That's a weird one to me, but I'll give him credit. Alex Caruso is a great choice. Some of these awards I don't get. I don't like Hustle of the Year award and Clutch Player of the Year award because none of them make sense to me. Like, how do you measure that? There's so many variables that go into Hustle and Clutch that
right. Who won Clutch?
Steph. Like, it makes sense, but at the same time, there's also clutch defense, clutch rebounding. Like, there's just so many factors of clutch basketball that I'm not really a fan of the award. But let's do it, Mo. The greatest season at every position. So let me ask you, do you want to go first or do you want me to start?
No, you go ahead and cook.
Okay, so I'll let you know right now that every single one of my players were NBA champions.
That's a good start.
Except one. Because there's one season that was such an absolute outlier that I found it way too hard not to include. My honorable mention, and this would probably be number 2, 1987 Magic Johnson. That was almost my number 1. But 2016 unanimous MVP Steph Curry was an absolute weapon in the regular season. He had the greatest regular season of all time that we had ever seen, and maybe forever, at least one of them. And he was still really impactful in the playoffs. I know we can say his numbers went down, but he was still drawing so much defensive attention that it opened up a lot of things. And I get it. He blew a 3-1 lead and all that, great stuff. But I don't think you can really take away from the fact that he shot 50, 40, 90, 30 per game. Let's say then scroll over. Yeah, 30 a game. That's what I thought. And he hit 402 threes. So it's not like he's shooting, 40%, 45% actually, on like, 2 threes a game. No, he's taking 11 threes a game and hitting 45% of them. To me, the rest of these guys are champs, but Steph Curry is the exception, just like he's an exception, an outlier just at the point guard position. Because 2016, if you didn't see that, go back and watch it because it was cinema.
He did. I mean, look, you started off with something there's only one first. He is the first unanimous MVP in the history of basketball. That's Wilt, that's Kareem, that's Jordan Bird. You name it, LeBron, Kobe. None of these guys, and that's kind of weird if you think about it. You at a glance you go like, come on, I'm sure LeBron's one or Wilt's one. He's the first unanimous MVP in the history of basketball, and that will never change. He will always be the first. I have no problem with him being number one. I mean, I would have had him one. I would have had Miami Heat, LeBron. I believe what year was that? I always get that wrong. Was it 20? Not it was maybe the year after they lost to the Mavericks, right?
Yeah, he had that 2012
that
2013 season.
You can make an argument that particular guy right there, that season right there, that was the best basketball player I'd seen. And that's on both sides of the basketball for that year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing. I have no problem with that. But again, I have no problem with Steph being one because Steph, like you said, he's an outlier. It's funny that we say this, but Steph is a unicorn. Steph is a unicorn. You will never see anything like Steph Curry and the impact that he's had on the game again. I mean, he's taking a 35-footer. It's not one of those things where coaches scream at you now. If you can shoot that with form and at a high level, a coach will say that's a good shot. But there's like 4 people that can do that and call that a good shot in the NBA. And Steph happens to be number 1 still. And I'm sure Dame is probably number 2.
Yeah, because they can shoot it without breaking form or doing anything.
Exactly. They don't break form. That's the key.
So Mo, who do you got for did you have Steph or did you have someone different?
I had LeBron. That's who. Oh, you meant at guard spot? No, we had the same guy.
Point guard. Okay.
I was literally going back and forth with my guy Magic, and it was close, but I didn't want to be a homer, so I went to Steph.
Yeah, like I said, I think 87 Magic would be my number 2. He was absolutely terrific, and that team was the greatest offense that we had ever seen for the longest time, until there was an offensive explosion in the 2017 Warriors, but that is an offense that really stood the test of time. And now, shooting guard position. I'm sure you can guess the guy that I picked for the greatest one-year peak for a shooting guard.
I'm assuming Jordan.
Yeah, so you may have heard of him. A little-known guy, Michael Jordan. He's pretty good at basketball.
Pretty good.
But the hard part with me for Jordan, what year? Like, there's so many years for MJ that you can sit there and say, yeah, this was his greatest season. No, this was his greatest season. So
that's interesting because he had some amazing seasons where he didn't win the championship, but his individual season was insane.
Yeah, no, and my runner-up for Jordan seasons, because I actually had to do this, is 87, 88, where he was the MVP and DPOY.
Right.
I think the year is 91. I think 1990, 1991 Jordan is the greatest season and just the greatest version of Jordan that we've seen. I think that was the year where his athleticism, hadn't, waned. But you started to see a lot of that really intelligent, high basketball IQ, like post work, post fades. This almost felt like this was MJ really had learned the game and really had that basketball IQ that we saw, in the second three-peat. But he also had that athleticism from, peak MJ when he was really young. So this almost feels like the best I can say that he really melded peak athleticism and peak IQ is I think it really all came together in the 1990-1991 season. So I'm going to go with that year, but there's like 8 seasons on here that if you picked any of them, I'd be like, I ain't got an issue with it.
Right. Yeah, look, I'm with you. I thought that Jordan on the first three-peat, that version of Jordan during the first three-peat, I think that's the best version of Jordan. That is the marriage of still one of the best athletes in basketball, but he'd become so much more skilled. His IQ was through the roof. He had developed a post game like that. That to me, that was the Michael Jordan that I believe in that first finals against the Lakers. I think he averaged like 32 points and 11 assists. Like he was that dude.
No, he absolutely was. He was an absolute issue, and I absolutely love it. Like when if people question how good MJ was, just go back and show them that 90-91 season, because he was just an absolute basketball wizard throughout those years.
Well, the catch is the people that don't seem to care for him, a lot of them weren't born to like 2000. So I'm just saying, like you want to have a conversation. It's hard to have it. It's hard. Well, I went back and looked at those old grainy YouTube videos, and he couldn't go left, like or something insane. Like, well, look, he was playing against plumbers, Mo. Like, stop that, man. Stop doing that. You're embarrassing yourself. Chill out.
All right, and of course, this brings us to small forward. Sure, we can both agree that the answer here is LeBron James.
My number 2 though was Larry Bird. Not the first MVP. I think it was the second one with the Celtics. Larry Bird had a window where he was absolutely his peak years were amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we're probably going to both agree on the answer here is 2012, 2013 LeBron.
Yeah.
There is one version of LeBron that I don't think people realize how good he was that I wanted to mention, and it came close to me. And that is 2009 LeBron. People talk about how he got bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals, by Orlando. But this is a guy who scored 38 a game against Orlando, against the number 1 defense. Not only that, people like to talk about the stat true shooting percentage. He was 4.5. He was a plus 4.5. He was 4.5 points better than league average true shooting. The Orlando Magic just genuinely did not have an answer for LeBron James. There's nothing that they could do to stop him, because he was. I saw interesting stats about this. I think it was a couple days ago doing research. In terms of percentile, he was in 100th percentile in usage, still in the 80th percentile in efficiency, which is absolutely insane when you're handling the rock as much as him.
Right.
So the right answer is 2012, 2013 LeBron. That may have been the single greatest season I have ever seen from someone.
I won't argue with that.
But man, people sleep on 09 LeBron just because he got knocked out more by Orlando, not realizing.
And let me be clear, the Orlando team, I just want to put it out there, the team was a better basketball team. Like the Cavs had some solid players. I don't want to act like he didn't have any solid players, but what Orlando did was they knew that we could guard them. We could control Mo. We could slow down Big Z. Or I think at the time he had 2009. Didn't he have Shaq? I think he had Shaq.
Yeah, and then oh no, that was the year after.
The year after. So it was Big Z, but they shut down everybody but LeBron. And look, that was a good strategy. They couldn't stop him from the get, but they knew if they shut down the other guys around him, they'd have a chance to win the series, and they did. I mean, but LeBron's numbers for that series, they were insane.
Yeah, no, it's insane kind of, looking at it in the past. Like, the second best player was Mo Williams. He had taken the second most amount of shots, shot 37% from the field, not even from 3.
Right.
So, you look at it and you go, holy cow, how in the world, are these guys, Big Z, 44% from the field, being, 7'1", 7 foot tall, that's pretty bad too. So,
well, Z had the worst matchup though. He was dealing with prime Dwight Howard.
So yeah, I don't really.
It's a tough matchup.
Yeah, I don't really blame him too much for that one, but I think too much of the fault falls on LeBron for that 09 series.
But no, it's not his fault. Look, I I just think Orlando top to bottom had more talent. Nothing changed. He was still the best player. They had that line where, well, if we said, okay, LeBron's the best player, Dwight Howard's the second best player, I think the third, fourth, and fifth and sixth best players were all in Orlando.
Oh, 100% agreed. That Magic team had guys, Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu.
Right.
Hell,
Jameer Nelson, Skip to my Lou, he was on there. It was a
even
good team.
even someone like Michael Petrus wasn't a terrible player.
Right. Great wing defender, 3-and-D kind of guy. Like, yeah, Michael Petrus was solid for that team. So that was a really good team. I know a lot of people, they like to water down that finals that the Lakers won against the Magic, but I go, no, that was a good basketball team. The Lakers were better because obviously Kobe was the greater player and he showed it in the finals, but that was a good Magic's team. And it wasn't like it was a 5-game or 4-game sweep or a gentleman sweep. We beat them in 6 games. They were competitive.
No, absolutely. And now it's time for the power forward position.
This should be good. This should be the one. I'm trying to think where your head's at. Now, when you did this, you did it before the merger or after the merger? Like, is not like
I did all of mine after, since that's normally what we
Okay.
do our list on.
That makes it easier to try to guess where you're at. If you're going after, I have to assume you're looking at from power forward. That's a tough one because that would make Dirk live, that would make Duncan live, that would make Garnett live, that would make Malone live, Barkley live. That's a tough one. If you said, because you're talking about the run they had at their peak, actually, the guy that I had, and you probably will disagree with me, who I had, and I'm going off a peak. I'm not saying who had a better career, right?
Yeah.
I did Dirk at his peak. I went with Dirk.
I don't think that's a wrong answer. I don't really think there is a wrong answer. This one was really tough. My runner-up was 2004 MVP Kevin Garnett.
Oh, that's a great one.
I think that he was absolutely phenomenal, and the team ran out of gas against the Kobe and Shaq Lakers. That team, which I think it just simply had a worse team. There really isn't much to explain there. But my greatest season from the power forward position, I went with 2003 Tim Duncan. I think Tim Duncan had to. When people talk about all-time great carry jobs, I don't think enough people mention 2003 Tim Duncan because they look at name value, right? Oh, he had David Robinson. Yeah, but David Robinson wasn't the Admiral in 2003.
No.
Oh, he had, Tony Parker. Tony Parker really wasn't Tony Parker in 2003 either. He had some solid guys behind him, Bruce Bowen, Steven Jackson. But in terms of really, carrying the offense and, anchoring a team, a lot of the times it just really fell on Tim Duncan because there wasn't a lot of offense, people that can generate their own shots at that team. The Admiral, like I said, he was a good player, but past his prime. So a lot of the times everything just fell on Duncan, and he illustrated and responded with just an all-time great season, capturing, I believe, 03. That was one of his MVPs, and just an even better playoff run. So I think there are a lot of great answers. I think 06, 07 Dirk was a really good one.
That's where I was going. But I look, I think yours is we both agree there's no wrong answer, but I think yours is the better answer. Because I feel like it doesn't seem that long ago that Tim Duncan was playing, but he gets kind of treated like he played 40 years ago. I think Tim Duncan is terrific. I hate it when people go, well, Duncan didn't have a handle and he couldn't shoot. I'm like, don't do that, man. Like, don't water basketball down to a game of around the world. Well, because look, if I played my gym teacher one-on-one, I'm destroying him. But if we play a game around the world, that guy wins all the time. So I don't want to lose sight of how great a player Tim Duncan was. I think that's a good call. I like Tim Duncan for the power forward, his peak years. You forget who he had to go through to get to a championship. Never mind who he played in the championship, but who he had to go through, and he did it. And like you said, That wasn't David Robinson. That was the remains of David Robinson that he was playing with. That wasn't the Admiral. Had he been playing with the Admiral, they would have won more championships. He was playing with David Robinson long in the tooth past his prime, and they had some good role players, but they didn't have like that was not a stacked Spurs team. It felt like it, but that's because that's how great Tim Duncan is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brett. Did they play the Nets in that finals, or was it somebody else?
No, yeah, it was the Nets.
Okay. I thought I remembered that. I thought that was the one where they had I think they had Kenyon Martin and those guys along with Jason Kidd, of course. And that was when Jason Kidd was like at his peak. We're talking about peaks. That was when Jason Kidd led the Nets to the finals back-to-back seasons. Another great peak. But yeah, look, Tim Duncan is amazing. I think of the very best version of Tim Duncan, and then I'm thinking of Garnett, and then I'm thinking of Dirk, and I think ultimately, I think you're right. It should fit if we were going to rank them. I'd go Duncan, Garnett, Dirk.
Yeah, and people also in the '03, people got to remember that they think of Tim Duncan as like this statue of a player. After like I think it was '05, Tim Duncan started suffering quite a few leg injuries, but he would absolutely he wasn't completely immobile, before like '05 after before the leg injury. So
Right.
I think people just remember like, 2012, 2013 Duncan, which
That's what
is
I figured. I said the people that saw Tim Duncan play against the Heat near the end of his career, that was still a terrific Tim Duncan, but that wasn't peak Tim Duncan. I saw peak Tim Duncan get like drive the ball to the basket and dunk over Shaq and Kobe. I witnessed it. I was complaining. I threw stuff at the TV. I saw it. People go, well, Shaq dominated him. Like Shaq had his moments against the Spurs, but when the Spurs beat the Lakers, nobody on the Lakers could guard Tim Duncan. That includes Shaq. He was just so skilled and versatile. Like that little 10 or 12-foot bank shot, he mastered that on both sides of the floor. He had a jump hook. He could put the ball on the deck and attack you. Like I think people forget because they look at Tim Duncan and go, "Oh, he was more of a back to the basket player." Yeah, he can play with his back to the basket, but I seen him turn, face guys up, and take him to the hoop and dunk on them.
see, would Tim Duncan be Tim Duncan on another team besides the Spurs? I think Tim Duncan would just be Tim Duncan regardless of where you put him. I think he would be. I think obviously what the Spurs did a masterful job was just surrounding him with the right pieces to continuously be successful.
Right.
But Tim Duncan was just so good that I think he's one of those players that he's going to succeed unless if you went to a team that tried to make him like a spot up shooter or just something absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
As long as you let Tim Duncan play to his strengths, he's just going to be Tim Duncan regardless of where he goes.
Tim Duncan should have played in the purple and gold, man. He would have looked so good in purple and gold.
Speaking of the purple and gold, I'm sure you can guess who I have was the greatest center season of all time.
It's got to be Shaq, right?
2000 Shaq.
It absolutely has to be Shaq. Yeah, we're on the same page, partner.
Like you can, like you were saying earlier, you can find, like, to me, Shaq is the perfect example of how skill doesn't always equal mean that you're better, because you can find players in history that are more skilled than Shaquille O'Neal. You can't find anybody that dominated more or impacted winning more than Shaquille O'Neal, or it's really tough to do so. Like the level of dominance that this man had was absolutely insane. It didn't matter who you put in front of him. Rick Smits, bullied. You put, what was it, against Philly? They tried.
Mutombo.
They put DPOY winner Mutombo. He was getting pushed under the basket. Outside of like, and I always give him all the credit in the world for being able to do this. Outside of like Arvydas Sabonis,
Yeah, the only guy.
there wasn't anybody in the NBA that was big enough that could really just slow down or stop Shaq. That's where you had guys like, Greg Ostertag and guys like that hanging out the end of benches just because Shaq would put so many people in foul trouble. Now you have to waste 3 roster spots on random unskilled centers, pretty much just to foul out of the game for Shaq.
That's another great part about Shaq that I think people don't really lock in on. The guy would literally get your front line in foul trouble. too many times when the Lakers weren't shooting well, the other team would be in the penalty and the Lakers would be able to generate offense by attacking the basket because you were already in the penalty. Um, and late in games when they were in the penalty, that's great when you've got a guy like Kobe on the outside attacking the rim, because then Kobe's a great free throw shooter. So look, Shaq was so dominant back then. You forget, Brett, like when after they won their third championship against the Nets, what did the league do in the offseason? They changed the rules again. They changed the rules again. You know what I mean? They made it to where you could play somebody in front of them, back them. They put the lane was opened up more. 3 seconds was called even more proficiently. Like they made it to where he couldn't just dive into the post and bury guys under the rim. They took a lot of what he could do away, and it wasn't an accident that following year the Spurs beat them, and then the next year they beat the Spurs because of the crazy miracle shot by Derek Fisher. They go to the finals, and the Pistons, because they have an excellent coach, they have an excellent roster top to bottom. They used the rules to full advantage, and they controlled not just Shaq, they controlled Kobe as well. It to this day, there might be teams that are better in the long term in terms of how many titles they won, but the greatest defensive job I've ever seen in an NBA Finals was the 03-04 Pistons and what they did to the Lakers.
And a lot of people will talk about, Shaq not being great on defense, which I think to an extent his individual defense had left some to be desired. He struggled against, floor spacers. But I think people forget that part of his defense really was his offense. It wasn't necessarily the fact that he was a great, individual defender. It's the fact that he just put your starter on the bench and now you got some random unskilled center having to be in the game, which really sinks the offense and defense. So I think that's one underappreciated part about Shaq is
that's a great point.
He may not have been the greatest individual defender, but he also kind of played defense just by making every single one of your most important bigs leave the game and bringing in some unskilled backup.
Shaq, to me, Shaq is the prototype of when the opposing team would go, okay, I've got a couple of backup centers. You guys can use all of your fouls, right? And Shaq would make everybody use all their fouls. You're right. His best defense was the impact he had on your team, what he did offensively. You can't foresee the future, but I don't know if you're ever going to see as dominant a run as Shaquille O'Neal had in the early 2000s. I've never seen anything like it. I witnessed it as a Laker fan, and it was scary to think that could have continued, had they not had chemistry issues or whatever. But Shaq was just so dominant, man. Like I said, David Robinson more skilled, Patrick Ewing more skilled, but they weren't as dominant. They weren't quite the players or impactful as Shaq was. I think of it this way: Shaq to me in the early 90s, because he's from class of 92, I believe, and in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, he was Giannis with an extra 60 pounds on his frames.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that agile, that powerful, that quick, that like the way Giannis is. When Giannis is healthy and he's allowed to go one-on-one or attack you in the open floor, it's over. Bad things are going to happen to your team or whoever's waiting for him in a one-on-one situation.
No, absolutely. So, there you guys have it. Our greatest one season peak from a center or from every single position. And, Mo, before you get out of here, I just got to say this, man. If I'm Paul George right now, I'm punching air because imagine being called a quitter by Evan Turner. To me, that was just the most hilarious thing. I'm just like, there's no shot. There is this is not happening right now. There's no way. Mr. Got to win by 15 to win by 1.
Right.
I was just like, this is not happening right now. Come on.
See, that's what we do. We live in this era now where former players who were average or below average players are questioning. I think Paul George is a 7-8 time All-Star. Questioning his softness or toughness. I don't doubt that Paul George is mentally tough enough. Now, if you want to get into the conversation about his body falling apart from time to time, I don't think that's about mental toughness. See, it's just sometimes that's just your lot in life. You think T Mac wanted to be hurt all the time.
No.
You think Kawhi starts off every year going, well, by the time the playoffs come around, my knee's gonna swell up. That's not a plan, man. It's just how it is. But Evan Turner, I remember the career that you had. You should be very quiet. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Was Evan Turner wasn't he a lottery pick? Wasn't he like taken top 2, top 3, somewhere in there? Like he was taken very high to turn around and just be a guy. Like for where he was drafted to turn out to be just a jag, you can't talk smack if you're a jag.
He was the number 2 pick in the
number. Let me say something because I know Ohio State University is one of our big. There's Ohio, USC, and Alabama. I'm starting to wonder about Ohio State and their basketball program. Let me say why. Look at what I remember when Jim Jackson came out. Jim Jackson was highly touted. They were like Jim Jackson, and then Jim Jackson just turned out to be a jag. And then Evan Turner turned out to be a jag. And then here we are with D'Lo. D'Lo's another Ohio State guard. Maybe what I should warn people and scouts about: don't draft Ohio State guards.
No,
actually, I take that back. If you're playing football, definitely draft Ohio State guards. If you're playing basketball, don't draft Ohio State guards.
I think the best player that comes from Ohio State that you can make an argument for is like the only one I can remember being like really. I think they have some good role players, and I'm going to say that just because Mike Conley I think came from Ohio State. But no, I agree, and it's funny to me that we're questioning him in big games when in all reality, who's the guy that led the Clippers to their only conference finals?
Paul George.
Kawhi was hurt.
Thank you, Paul
George.
In
2019, Paul George was an MVP caliber player. So,
look, I get it. What I would say though is to guys like Evan Turner, who should already know this, winning championships and winning titles, that's hard, man. That's really hard. If it was just that easy, then Giannis would have 3 of them. If it were just that easy, Jokic right now wouldn't be facing an 0-2 deficit. Like, it's hard to win titles. Paul George, I think early in his career at his athletic peak, he challenged Miami when it was LeBron, Miami, and D Wade, and he pushed them, but he couldn't beat them. That doesn't mean that he wasn't mentally tough enough. That just meant they had the greatest player in the game at the time. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
D Wade at the time was probably top 5. So you weren't going to win that. I've always been a fan of Paul George's talent. If I want to be honest about how I felt of the breadth of his career, it's not about is he a quitter? Because I don't think he's a quitter. I don't think that at all. I just think that some guys, and I'm talking about your mental makeup, like Jimmy Butler's mental makeup is, I might not lead the league in scoring in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I become one of the 10 best players in the league, right? Like he becomes an absolute dog. If you said, Mo, if you had a chance to pick Jimmy Butler, age 28, and Paul George, age 20, I'm going to take Jimmy, but not because he's more talented. Again, not more talented than Paul George, but Jimmy's a dog. It's a mental makeup. And not everybody has that. If you just get caught up in a guy's skill, you're going to miss out on why they don't do as well at the next level. When people looked at the highlight reel that they put together for what's the kid's name, James Wiseman.
Oh yeah,
and people thought James Wiseman is about to open up and be the next elite center. He can run the floor. He's athletic. He's long, and they put together a nice highlight reel. But what I did is I didn't watch the highlight reels. I went and watched their games, and what I saw in the games is he wasn't that good. He was lazy. He didn't like being touched. Could handle no level of physicality, and he took that to the NBA. It's not James Wiseman's shortcomings isn't because Steve Kerr doesn't work with young players. It's because James Wiseman wasn't a good player. The Warriors' mistake was they wasted that high a draft pick on James Wiseman. That's their own fault. Somebody in that scouting room, Brett, was like, if we get Wiseman, we're going to win 6 titles. And they were like, we got to get him then because Steph will love him. And then Steph got him, and I'm sure Steph played with him through the summer, and he went to him in training camp. And then Steph looked at the scouts and said, this guy?
No, I agree. Like, people get too caught up on those highlight tapes. Another one, Austin Rivers high school
that's a
highlight
good
tape was absolutely elite. His NBA career, he was a serviceable role player.
Didn't he hit like a game winner when he was at Duke? That was like his claim to fame at the time. Like, he hit like a game winner at Duke, and they were like, Austin Rivers is going to do so well at the next level. And look, I'm not judging in the sense of could Austin Rivers play? Obviously, he could play, but his role or his lot in life in the NBA, like you said, Brett, was he was a good role player. He could be a serviceable role player, but he wasn't a star. He wasn't close to being anything like that. I wouldn't even say he was a star role player. Like if I was going to call somebody a star role player, it would be a guy like Josh Hart. That's a star role player. Look, some guys have it, some guys don't, but I would love to have a discussion with anybody that wants to go, well, I will take talent over a guy who works hard. Look, I would love it. To me, talent is a natural luxury to have. When you walk into a gym, I'm more talented than everybody in here. But when you get out on the floor with the rest of the guys, does your mental makeup, does it go well with your talent to where we can all see you're the best player on the floor? Or you look like the best player on the floor, but your team's getting beat by 15 because you're actually not that good. I'm just saying.
No, I absolutely agree. And yeah, that's the last topic we had for you guys. We definitely thank you for tuning in. Mo, do you have any last words, sir?
No, I appreciate everybody for checking out N1. Make sure you guys check out N1 on our Discord. We've got a Facebook page. N1 is powered by the great Wire to Wire Sports. Make sure you check out all the content that we have at Wire to Wire. Wire to Wire, we appreciate you.
And if you tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central, you can see a guy that looks incredibly similar to Mo on the morning show. So
yeah, that guy's shady.
Yeah, that's fair. So make sure to tune in, and really go after that shady guy now. But I just realized I can actually see Peanut in the background. So me, Mo, and Peanut, thank you all for tuning in. And ladies and gentlemen, you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for tuning in to the And One podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And One? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page and join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day.